Hello, fellow teachers, fellow lifelong learners. Welcome to another interesting episode of the English Blog. My name is Adrian.
I'm Christine.
And I'm Sarah.
We are the English Blog team, a blog of English teachers by English teachers and for English teachers.
And in today's episode, we are talking about ESL games and gamification. If you are a teacher who's looking for ways to make your classes more fun and exciting, then this might be the episode just for you. Also, don't forget that the English Blog provides customized lesson plans, curriculum mapping and unit planning, life and career coaching sessions, and weekly vlog and blog content related to ESL education. All you have to do is send us a message at www.theenglishblog.com. Oh, and be sure to subscribe to our website for exciting offers and updates.
Beyond subscribing, you can also find us all over social media. We premiere our videos here on Facebook, and you can find us on Facebook. The English Blog for Teachers is the URL, but if you want to just search us, just the English Blog. We're also on Instagram, _English_blog. We're also on Twitter at the English Blog 1. You can also find us on LinkedIn, or just listed as a company, so Google us, or LinkedIn search us, I guess. And then you can also find us on YouTube, where we post our old vlogs, or you can find them on Facebook. We don't have a fancy URL yet, but the more people that watch it, the quicker we'll get there. So thank you guys. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe from whatever platform you use, and talk to us. Let us know what you think.
And so here goes the first question. What is gamification? So gamification in education is actually the process of transforming typical academic components into gaming themes. Gamification endeavors to literally create a game out of learning by theming all components of your classroom in a game metaphor. So make your class like one big first-person game. Remember that the goal is to enhance learning by increasing student engagement.
It's the use of game-like activities in a non-game context. And a really good example of a non-game context is the English classroom. And gamification can come in many forms. It can come in the form of digital and non-digital games alike. It can come in the form of an individual reward system where you have a student work towards a certain goal, or a class-wide competition where students are competing against each other. Either way, whatever form it comes, it's used as a way to motivate students in their learning, and it gives them something to work towards.
Next question is, how can you apply gamification in the classroom? So theming your classroom in a gaming metaphor requires choosing a theme. So you can have a theme like medieval times, fantasy, mystic, space battles, military, and what have you, and referring to everything in your class with gaming terms. For example, student becomes player, their assignment becomes quest, their grade will become quest points, and class party is equivalent to game reward. So you can actually repackage their grades, and that refers to exchanging letter or number grades on assignments with experience points in the class. So in most storyline style games, players earn points for each challenge met at pre-described intervals. Character level up or increase to the next higher level of the game. And in gamification of the classroom, leveling up is synonymous with the student's grade improving by a letter grade. So you can use this kind of tactic. You can also, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is possible to find already themed games out there online. You can also create your own leaderboards, for example, and just to make a whole theme out of your class.
And I just want to say, taking off from what Adrian said, Adrian gave a very complicated and totally immersive game, which is part of what we'll talk about on the vlog, but there are also ways to insert games just everywhere in your classroom. I like Adrian's idea of a truly kind of like a LARP, like a live action role play English class, especially for summer camps, like immersion summer camps. To me, that seems like a really great idea because it's kind of fun. It's going to be a short duration, so it's easier for you as the teacher to prepare and really go big for a week or two in a meaningful way that's a little more exciting than just school. I teach a lot of children, and I've taught children of all ages plus adults. So I also want to remind everybody that if you are teaching children, or if you just know children, you just have young children, then you'll already know this tip, which is that for young learners, you can make almost anything and everything a game. And in my opinion, you should. You make lining up a game. You make being quiet a game. You make following instructions a game, and you reward them, and you make everything seem more fun than the boring rote task that it is. That's just classic. Anybody who is around any child in any language will know that. Obviously, as children age, you need to and I'm not going to say tone down your games, but it's not fun if you make lining up a game and the kid is 9. So you've got to reevaluate your games and make sure that as the children age, and of course when you get into adults, that your games are thoughtful and that they're teaching the things that you want to teach. When you're teaching little kids, yeah, they need to learn patience. They need to learn turn taking. They need to learn how to walk in the hallway. But at a certain point, they've already mastered those skills, and those things don't need to be games. They just need to be assumptions. Otherwise, it gets kind of a little bit juvenile sometimes. So be careful, but there are lots and lots of different kinds of games, and games grow as your students do. And we'll talk more about that in specific games later in the video.
What's the value of integrating games into your lessons, Christine?
Just like games that you play outside the classroom, a lot of them develop certain skills, right? Like critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, creative thinking. And the same can be applied to games that you use in the classroom, in addition to developing language abilities. But students learn better when they can make positive connections to what they learned in the classroom. I have had students who can recall silly, funny events that happened while playing games in the classroom months or even years after the fact. And of course, that's not to mention the grammar and vocabulary that they acquired along the way. And of course, that's the most important part of it. So I think that games are very important because it adds a fun element to the class. And of course, students remember best when they can connect those positive emotions to their learning experience.
Yeah, I absolutely love games. And beyond the stuff that Christine mentioned about how it's motivating and it creates a positive experience, the reason that I love games and the reason that I love to use games with adults is that when you are teaching, especially an adult, your job is you want to replicate a native acquisition as best you can, especially if you are a native speaker teacher like me. That's always been my job. You need to make them experience school as if they would in the US. That's my job. So in order to get somebody to acquire English as if it were their native language, you must use it in service to something else. So by adding the game element, it just takes your brain and it moves it. And all of a sudden, you're not doing English, you're solving a puzzle. And it just so happens that this puzzle must be solved in English. And by doing it that way, you completely engage all of those parts of our brain that are naturally engaged when you learn a native language. And you get to tap into all of that stuff that really, really like motivates us primally to use language, because you've got a puzzle that your little human brain wants to solve. You want that reward. You want to know the answer. Your games they're almost always social. So now all of a sudden you've got this social interaction to solve this puzzle. You've got a real goal, and it's all happening in English, but English is just the medium for doing this task and solving it, which helps you replicate native ways of acquisition and makes your acquisition stick. Like Christine was saying, you have to connect all of those other parts to get people to really feel it. And for adults, it can be very difficult to make it mimic a native style of acquisition because they've already acquired their mother tongue and they're kind of sitting there. And if you're just reading copybooks and doing grammar charts, you're not doing that. That isn't what you do when you're 2 years old learning to speak whatever your native tongue is. So your goal is to get people back into that mindset, and games, I think, are the best, simplest way to do it because they automatically do and people crave them.
Yep, absolutely true. What games would you recommend for learning English? I will recommend three. First one is The Last Man Standing, and I think both Christine and Sarah have already played this game before. So you can do this standing, you can also do this sitting. Just have a ball or something that they can pass around. And then as you start the game, you can think of a category or a theme. For example, kitchen utensils or something like that, kitchen appliances. Then as the ball is passed, everyone who gets the ball or that object being passed around should think of a term in English. This is good for vocabulary that they could use within the lines of the theme that was chosen, and then they should not repeat the same word again. If not, they will be out of the game. They will put in the sideline, and then, of course, the last man standing would be the winner. Number two, I'm an old guy, so number two is Pictionary. So this is a drawing game, and of course, you can divide the classroom into two teams, and then as you give them a time limit, for example, of 1 to 2 minutes, for example, and then whoever is drawing will make the people in his team guess. And of course, whoever gets the most points, they correctly guess the object being drawn, wins the game. And then another oldie but goodie game is charades. So this is the verbal version of Pictionary. This time you're going to use words. You can't use actions this time, and you can have them guess words out of a theme that you choose or anything that you have in mind. So those are three suggestions that I have for games you can use in ESL.
That's very good, Adrian. And I wanted to add some ideas to that. You can make variations of games. You don't have to follow game rules to the T. For example, with Pictionary, usually it's one person and maybe another person or a group of people guessing what picture is being drawn. You can flip that and make that multiple people drawing a picture and then one person guessing. So there are ways to make games more fun by adding different variations. For taboo words, for example, that's a very common ESL game. Instead of having them guess a single word, you can have students guess a whole sentence. Instead of having taboo word cards, you can have bunches of words on the board. And then a student secretly chooses a word on the board, describes it, and then the students have to guess which of those words is being described. You circle the word and move on. The next student describes a secret word on the board. So there are really many different variations of the same games that you can play to make your class more interesting, and that's something that I do all the time. Just try to think, what can I do? How can I alter this game? It's maybe the same game, but it's done a little bit differently just to keep the class fun and spice things up a bit.
My suggestion is I do a lot of games and I make a lot of games too. So I like to take inspiration from games, and the simpler the better. And I started a rule because I was sick of cutting out a bunch of paper. I make a rule that most of my games have no equipment from my end or the student's end because it's just better. It helps you get into that zone of just super simple, super quick. Because yeah, you don't want to waste time explaining complicated instructions. So I like to look for simple, fun, especially speaking games from English media. I do a lot of games that are on British quiz shows. Would I Lie to You? QI, Jeopardy, which is a US based trivia game. That I don't know why that has been extremely popular with all the European children I've ever taught. It's basically just a review game. You just put the questions on there, but you play some special music and it's got a special PowerPoint and they love it. Late night, like little games from comedy shows or talk shows, like those games where you put something in a box and you have to describe it. Yeah, I like to go and look at English media and English like board games type and party games, I guess I should say. I've played Balderdash, which is where you make up fake definitions for stuff. Um, like Outburst or Family Feud type survey games. Yeah, so go and if you have the resources, go and look it up and look at all sorts of English media and the types of games that you can play that are really simple. A lot of the games that Adrian listed are also party games, charades, Pictionary, and there's all kinds of variations for those. Um, and yeah, and I also like to use the TV games because if it's a brand new game, you can show an example. You show a video of somebody playing the game, and it's so quick to explain it. And then also don't be afraid to use games that they're already familiar with. I don't know if you guys play it. Sometimes it's called Werewolf and sometimes it's called Mafia. Yeah, you can. They're usually familiar with that game in their own language, and so you can just kind of tweak it, play stuff like that. It makes them fun. And yeah, don't be afraid to look all over the internet and find other people's games. And like Christine said, retrofit them to meet your needs. And that would be a great blog post that I'll get started on.
Awesome, awesome ideas. Thank you, ladies. What are the benefits of integrating gamification in an ESL classroom?
So this question is sort of similar to the one that we answered earlier. But to reiterate, the benefits are, as Christine said earlier, you can motivate students. It adds novelty to a class, which can be really important for any age group. It kind of keeps it from getting boring, which keeps like morale up and interest in the course generally. And if they don't know what every single day is going to be, it's just a little more exciting and you can get a little more pep from them. Additionally, as I said before, you really need to do them to get the people thinking in English, using English as means to an end, which is going to help you reinforce the English because you're just using it in a task naturally. Yeah. Anything else, Christine?
People tend to think that as people get older, then they value participating in games or competing less. And that really is not true. Adult learners can be just as competitive, if not more competitive, than young learners. And gamification appeals to their competitive side. And if you think about it, our lives have essentially become gamified. Think about something simple like a Starbucks rewards card or collecting frequent flyer, what do you call that? Frequent flyer miles so that you can get a discount on future flights. So our lives have been gamified. Why can't we do the same thing to an ESL classroom? As you can see, the way companies deal with us, they give us some sort of motivation, and we can do the same exact thing with our students in the ESL classroom. And of course, you would want to tailor the activities according to your students' maturity and energy levels. But you should keep in mind that things like social cooperation, competition, creative thinking, those are things that games and game-like activities provide, and you should definitely incorporate them in your lessons for that reason.
It's always a win-win situation to actually include games in your lessons. Okay, I think we've come to the final question, and that is, how can you assess the effectiveness of gamifying your lessons. So first you need to set the ground rules, like when and how they'll get points and when they'll lose points. For example, if they speak in the vernacular, etc. Your games could either be a precursor to your lesson or done after you taught them a lesson to see how they use what they learned from the lesson. You can then gauge the effectiveness of gamifying your lessons through either the points that they got and the way they use the words and expressions as you facilitate the games.
Yeah, so when you're using games, it is important to make sure that you are monitoring how students are using it and if they're doing what you want, if they're using the language point that you want. Within the game, you need to monitor the game. Obviously, this is another reason to do simple games because it allows you, the teacher, to worry about paying attention to how your students are using English and not about to some kind of series of complex rules or point keeping, whatever. So yeah, while they're playing the game, you want to make sure that they're doing what you asked and that they're doing it correctly. If in the course of this game, I have played games where I realized, there's a loophole here that I didn't think of in a game that I created. And you learn from that and you change your game, you edit your game. So yeah, you need to pay attention to make sure that the game setup that you have created or you're using is actually accurate, that there's nothing off with the rules of the game, or if there's a way to tweak them to make it better for you, for your purposes. So you need to monitor students while you do it. You need to make sure too that your students are engaged in the game itself. If it's a well-crafted game, that kind of comes innately. But I will say that in working with the younger the learners, sometimes they can just get overexcited and the novelty and the social aspects of doing something cool with their friends takes over the actual game. And all of a sudden they're there and they're on a team, but they're not talking about the game. They're just giggling with each other and loving standing up, with a blue marker. So it's, so that I find that is really a problem with the younger learners. At the opposite end of the spectrum, with teens and sometimes the college students, and then sometimes even just adults, they can appear a little apathetic to your game, and you have the opposite problem. You don't have enough excitement, you don't have enough participation. And if that's the case, my first suggestion would be you really need to build rapport with them as a teacher. You need to, games, especially for adults or people who, sometimes games require you to feel foolish or to pretend or to assume another identity. And sometimes older children or adults are less comfortable with that than younger children are. And so if that's the case, I always recommend get a feel for your class before you introduce these kinds of games that require you to really think outside the box and be very imaginative and creative, because you need to build up these people's confidence and make them feel confident in you as a teacher, because people that are naturally avoidant of that kind of thing will give you what you want if they believe that you're doing what is best for them and if they feel that the classroom is a safe, non-judgmental space. You can also look at the types of games you're playing. If you find that either your kids aren't responding to it, maybe the game's too complicated. If your teens and adults aren't responding to it, maybe it's just not engaging, it's too simple, it's too whatever, old-fashioned. So take a look at your games, and then your game should never be your exam. That goes without saying. So games are practice, ways to use the language, but of course, you should always have plenty of worksheets, plenty of actual exams and tests that will also give you feedback as to whether this game helps them attain this language point.
Good thing I was muted because I laughed out loud when Sarah mentioned you should not use game as your exams. But that just shows how versatile Sarah is, because she has covered the types of games you should use for kids and then adult learners. And I was really giggling while she was sharing some stuff about the kid games that she suggested earlier, because she has vividly painted a picture, and I can imagine how fun it is to be in Sarah's classroom. All right, so as you guys watch this video, don't forget to like and share this to your family and friends, to your colleagues at work, to your fellow teachers. And don't forget to let us know also what games you play in your ESL lessons, whether that's online or in person before COVID. So if you guys have questions as well, put it in the comment section and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
And once again, don't forget that we provide customized lesson plans, curriculum mapping and unit planning, life and career coaching sessions, and weekly vlog and blog content related to ESL education. Simply send us a message at www.theenglishblog.com and be sure to subscribe to our website for exciting offers and updates.
You are probably watching this video on Facebook, so you have already found us. But we are on Facebook as The English Blog, and our URL is The English Blog for Teachers. You can also watch our videos on YouTube whenever you want. We're uploading them. I'm not sure they're all up there yet, but the ones come up every week. You can also find us on Instagram at _English_blog, Twitter, The English Blog 1, and LinkedIn. We're a company listed as The English Blog. And across those platforms, we announce new videos, new content, new blogs. So be sure to like, follow, subscribe, share, however you get your information, and let us know.
So until next time, it's a date, Friday night in the Philippines, and whatever time it is out there in the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our website and our social media platforms. My name is Adrian.